Hello, hello.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of The Journey, the Human Experience to Spiritual Enlightenment. I am Betty Cody, and I have with me today,
Sean Cody.
and we also have a wonderful guest. Introduce yourself here and tell us all your letters after your name, too.
Alphabet soup.
Yes.
So I am Yoli Castillo, and I go by Yoli, and I am a registered nurse. I'm also a nurse practitioner, and I happen to be licensed to be able to practice independently in the state of Florida. So I'm able to practice medicine in Florida.
Amazing. So today we have a very interesting topic. This was something that we had kind of bounced off when we were having ideas about the show and, what happens and why people connect to certain things. But before we get started, we always have a question.
If we're searching for a soul, we got to make sure there is one and it goes somewhere.
Right. So we always start the show with a question. So, Sean, take it.
Oh, I almost forgot about the question.
Go ahead, shoot.
Yoli, what does the term enlightenment mean to you?
The term enlightenment to me means being more connected to myself in order to be able to do things from a different vantage point or perspective. So not necessarily letting all of the noise dictate what I do, but I dictate what I do based off of inner strength, inner findings, inner experiences.
I love that answer.
Yeah, it's very interesting because everybody that we talk to, enlightenment means something completely different. Sometimes it's very similar, just the way that they express it, and it always intrigues us what it means to you.
Even ChatGPT brings some opinions into it.
Yeah.
Good old ChatGPT, that happens to be something that rings differently for me.
It could be onto something. You never know. You never know.
Apparently, it's a big thing, right?
Right.
So, one of your, one of the things that we were talking about was your previous experiences that you had actually as a hospice. Was it a hospice nurse or what was kind of your role in that?
Sure, let's talk about that for just a little bit. So there's a misconception in terms of the word hospice. People sometimes think that the word hospice means that you go to a place, as opposed to what hospice truly is, which is a mindset and a way to be able to allow someone to die with dignity. And so that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to go to a place to be able to be cared for in hospice. That just means that you are accepting to the concept of being able to transition in such a way where there is less pain, where there is more dignity for you as a person, and being able to reach that final stage in your life in your terms, using your way of being able to just arrive to the end of what is known as your life. So when people sometimes say, oh, so-and-so was signed up to hospice, the first thing that they'll ask is, where did they take them? Or what does that mean?
Well, because they can do it at their homes, correct?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You can do it at your home. You can do it in a facility. There's multiple ways to be able to receive hospice care. And that's pretty much the difference. It's not so much a place, but what is actually received to be able to end life and do it in such a way that it's on your terms, not necessarily someone else's terms. So having been a nurse now, it'll be 40 years this year, incredibly. That's a long time.
Yeah, that's a great,
right?
I mean, that you must have experienced so many different things.
So many different things.
Your career.
And at the beginning of my career, it was all about being a nurse in the emergency room. So I was programmed to be able to save people. And when I first joined the hospice movement, in my mind, it was counterintuitive to what I had learned.
Right.
And so it was, how do I let someone pass when everything inside of me says, save them?
Yeah, one more thing. Let me see how I can fix this.
How can I fix it?
Yeah.
How can I make it better? But there is a time when there is no more making it better.
Yeah.
There is a time where that transition is necessary. And how do you do it without experiencing pain? How do you do it on your own terms? And so we can talk about a lot of different experiences, but in essence, the gist of it is, how does someone end their life? And this is the part that really had meaning for me, with dignity. How do you honor someone who has been on the face of the earth for either a short amount of time or a very long amount of time? How does that honor actually take place?
Right.
And so when I started working with hospice, it was very enlightening. There's the word back at you. Because it was very enlightening for me to be able to understand, how do you let go? How does the individual let go? And how does either the loved ones or family or friends or their group of inner people, how do they also let go? And what is it that you're letting go to?
Right.
So am I letting go of a memory? That stays with you. Am I letting go of the physical being? Chances are, yes, you're not going to see that person again. But the lessons, the memories, the teachings, the life experiences that you had with that person, those don't go away. Those stay with you. So it was really interesting for me to be able to experience a lot of those different emotions and seeing all of the people around, because the hospice workers, they become very much involved and very much supportive of that concept. So being able to be around someone, and sometimes they could be as young as months old, days old, or they can be as old as people who are close to 100 years old or more. And so it's very interesting to see how it is, different religions, different upbringings. How do males do it versus how do females do it? How is it that somebody who comes from a different country and experiences end of life here in the U.S., how does that actually look? So that was the beginning of involving myself in this journey, and then being able to experience that and seeing repetitive behavior on all people from all different walks of life, having them experience the same things. Pretty much.
When you say the same things, are you talking about the last moments before they go?
Absolutely. That's exactly what I'm talking about.
So what does that look like? What does it look like when you're saying this happens multiple times with people, male, female, different religions, different beliefs, and they have this very similar experience? Is that what you're saying?
That's exactly what I'm saying. So end of life, here they are, last moments of their life, and they start experiencing same things over and over. People that don't know each other, patients that are not necessarily connected one to the other, and they will have different types of breathing patterns that they'll go into, different types of experiences in terms of, are they seeing certain visions? Do they start experiencing loved ones? And that's one of the many things that you see that people talk about, where they start calling others that have been a part of their life but are no longer here, and they have that connection with that person who isn't here anymore. They'll talk about, there's my mother.
And they really believe this person is there. To them, that person is as real as you and me.
Absolutely.
In that room.
Absolutely. And the rest of the people that are in the room do not see that. They don't experience that. And so it was the first time that I lived through that moment. It was interesting because I was with someone who was precepting, if you will, and that person was telling me, now this usually happens and that usually happens. And I always thought, how do you know?
Right.
How do you know? You don't know this person. How do you know that this is
Probably
going to
creepy seeing it the first time after it'd been explained to you that it's going to happen that way.
It was pretty intimidating because rookie in the room.
I don't know what would creep me out worse, that seeing it happen or realizing somebody just told me that it was going to happen in that manner.
And so it's funny because for the people that are around, the family members usually, what drives that, and you said something key, Sean, because you said it would creep you out. And so that sensation really comes from fear of the unknown.
Yeah.
So not knowing what's going to happen is what really drives that. Understanding that it happens over and over and over and over again on a daily basis for so many people is really interesting. And then the workers, the healthcare workers that are around, and many of them will be so compassionate and really honoring the person. They may not even have known the person for a long time. They may not have been the caregiver of that person for a long time. But being able to touch someone, being able to soothe that person through the letting go moment. And how many times haven't you heard someone say, "Oh, my family member was almost ready to die, but wouldn't die until
Yes,
this other
so and so
fam-"
came
Yeah.
in.
Correct.
Yes. Does that so before we go into that, when people are kind of at the end of their life cycle, that's kind of the way I like to look at it. Some longer, some shorter, but it's their life cycle. Do they seem peaceful, or do they seem like they're starting or fighting it? Like at that point,
There's those two different options actually exist. Some people will be more at peace with it, and they will be more accepting of it. And many times you ask the family members, and the family members will say, so-and-so already came to terms with it, and they knew that they would be passing.
Yeah.
It was funny because this weekend, yesterday, as a matter of fact, we went to go visit with someone here locally who we have befriended over a couple of years.
Yeah.
And she has gained age. She's 91 now. She recently suffered a stroke. And so we went to go visit her just to see how she was doing. And she, you know how when you were pregnant, Betty, did you ever experience that sensation of nesting?
Oh yeah, yeah.
And
You want to paint the house. You want to fluff
wanna
the
get
pillows.
You want to
and
get everything ready for the baby
Yeah.
that's coming, and you want to make sure that everything is
You want to
A-okay.
label it, label everything, put it by age, size. Yeah, I remember that.
Now, imagine the inverse of that. You want to put your matters in order. You want to start settling things. You want to make sure that your loved ones know where all of your documents are. You want to make sure that you have all of those important
Your will,
decisions.
having all your stuff and
Have all of that in place.
Your things are in order to give you comfort.
Correct. And so when we went to go visit our friend yesterday, it ended up being interesting because as we were leaving, I said, make sure that you say everything you want to say to her because she may not be here the next time we visit her.
Yeah.
Because she was already starting to show all of those,
the signs of
the signs of her
preparing for it.
being totally at peace with it. So sometimes I would always wonder, are they at peace with it because they've had a really great life? Because the what they did during the moments of their life, it brought them closure in certain things. So it's an interesting concept to say, you know, when it's that end, are you more combative, if you will, towards it, or are you more accepting of it? And that goes back to how did you live your life?
Do you feel that religion or beliefs or like any spiritual connection gives them comfort towards the end more than someone who, let's say, may be atheist or not believe in anything at all?
I've seen both very religious people and people who are not religious at all. I've seen them both pass. Sometimes very religious people, you would think that they would be more accepting. Sometimes they're not, because the fear of the unknown is what drives whether or not you're more accepting or not to that.
Well, I wonder too if the religion is the cause for that at some point. I mean, I'm not discrediting religion or anything. I mean, whatever gives you comfort gives you comfort. But, there's also rules and things like that come with religions. Have you lived your life the right way? Have you lived, and that maybe that's causing questions in their head. Maybe it's something they're going through where they're like, have I been good? Have I been true? Have I believed enough? Am I believing the right things? And as to where someone who doesn't believe or is comfortable with their belief of being satisfied, maybe that's an easier
I'll tell you
road.
the flip side of that, though, Sean. So people who are religious, you would think, are extremely at ease with this because your belief system is that you go to something
Beautiful. Yeah. Something,
Correct.
yeah.
the fear of the unknown at the moment that you have to go through that sometimes pulls people back. The inverse happens for those that are non-believers at times because it is the fear of the unknown. Now, am I truly going to either this is
So
my
it
end?
could go in any of those ways. I mean, either you could be highly religious and be concerned that you haven't done the best and the right things.
Correct.
Or you could be religious and know for yourself that you've been true and done the right things.
And
Or
I've
you
seen
could be an atheist and just be terrified of what may or may not come next.
and I've seen
There's just
people
be a
who
huge
are
mix.
non-believers towards the end of their life ask, "Can a chaplain please come in? I'd like to speak to a chaplain."
Yeah.
And they want to have that connection, that spiritual moment of being able to say my life had meaning. Because
Right.
at some point you have to sit back and say, what did I do during the time that I was here?
Yeah.
Did my dash, you know how they say you were born in this year and you died in that year, and then the portion that's in between is this dash. Did your dash have meaning?
Wow.
Yeah.
And it's such a small little thing on a headstone, you know? It's this year to this
So
year.
powerful, yeah.
But that's somebody's life, just that one little line.
Yeah.
And so,
How big is your dash?
how big is your dash? How important was your
How
dash?
important was your dash?
That is amazing. Yeah.
Did your dash really?
I think I might put that on a t-shirt.
Holy cow.
Like for legit.
Just a dash with a little "How did you do?" arrow.
Yeah.
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 What is the meaning of
Are
your
you
dash?
satisfied?
That could be like a hidden meaning T-shirt that people wander around and look at and wonder.
Yeah. That would be cool. That would
What
be
does
our
that
next
mean?
journey. Stay tuned for the journey t-shirts coming soon.
I got the press today. It's coming now.
But here's something I've also if you go through, I know it's a lot of people that you helped transition and be there for them and their families, and just focusing on kind of the array of different feelings and things that have happened or experiences people have. Do you have one that stands out the most, one that just kind of like moved you in a way or made you feel a certain type of way that you just couldn't explain?
Probably two. And I'll tell you, the two were, the first one was the absolute first one that I started talking to you about. That one had a lasting meaning for me because it was someone who was beginning to pass, and that person was at ease with their moment. And so it was, to me, as I explained, being an emergency room nurse, we got to work on this person. We got to do something.
Yeah.
And so that's when I learned that it's okay to let go.
Yeah.
So that was very, very powerful to me.
That was your life lesson in that one.
That was
Well, it's
my
almost
life
like
lesson.
what you have to give at that time is as much peace and comfort as you can.
You have to give as much peace.
It's something different. It's something different.
And it's not just to the person who's there, but it's to the people that that person meant something to.
Yes.
So you have to honor the people that are around that person, right?
So the very first one was definitely your life changing because it was your first, I guess, your induction to what happens when someone goes. And then you said you have another one that stood out?
The very last one.
Oh.
And I'll tell you why the very last one, because I moved away from hospice because it can be very grueling. It can be very intense. You're dealing with death and dying on a daily basis, correct? And so I was the administrator for one of the largest centers in Miami-Dade County. And so the way you look at things is there's a census. And so the census is how many patients do we have today? How many passed last night? So it's a revolving door of this experience of having people pass. And so unfortunately, at the moment, there was something that didn't go right. Medicine wasn't delivered at the right time to the person who was passing. The person had a difficult moment in passing. And so it was an opportunity for improvement for the people that we were working with, correct? And so the family members asked to meet with me, and they came to the office, and they actually, we sat down around the table, and the family members actually said something. And what they said was so moving for me that I decided that this would be something that I would have to move away from. And what they said was, you only get one shot of doing this right. And if you didn't do it right, my family member suffered because of it. You can't go back and make it right. If you go to a fast food place and you order a food and they get it wrong, you just bring it back and they'll change it out, and
if
they'll
you got a
fix it.
chicken sandwich instead of a hamburger, then
You can fix it.
it's fixable.
Exactly. You go to a different industry and you do something, 9 times out of 10, it can be fixed. This you can't fix. And so I walked away from that day saying, this is the end of my journey, because when I don't have control over this, it didn't make me feel right.
Right.
And so that's why I still do what I do. I still, utilize all of the things that I learned throughout this process. But it was the end for me to be able to ensure that people get it right.
Wow.
to be able to start
That's
that.
a lot of responsibility to make sure everybody else is doing what they're supposed to do, and
Yeah.
having control over that is, like you said,
Intense.
the one time you have one time, which with each person that's there, it's their one time, and that's a lot of pressure. Have you ever seen anybody see anything negative or dark that they feel might be in the room instead of the family members, or grandpa coming to take you over to the other side? Have you ever seen or felt or heard them say there was something that they didn't want there?
What I have experienced is, while being in the room, when the patient becomes extremely combative, and they are combative to not wanting to just let go and pass.
Mm-hmm.
Many times it is they are having an argument, or that's my term, they are having some sort of a discussion or some sort of an interaction
Mm-hmm.
with someone that you don't see, that you don't know, and closure isn't there yet. They haven't achieved closure. So it's not that it's a negative force or a negative being, or it's, I'm not ready yet. There's something that I have to finish. And that's how I would describe it, more so.
That's incredible. I mean, it's what's interesting is that we all have different lives, different stories, and then when it comes to our end, it's almost like it's like birth again. It's like we all start the process the same way. Might be a little different how they do it, but at the end, that's the bringing life. And now the way that we depart seems to have a very similar structure to that as well.
It's very much, and there's a whole movement of individuals who have studied this. There's multiple resources out there. The process, the elements that you go through the final stages, and like there are for grief and for mourning.
Mm-hmm.
Prior to that, there are elements that have been studied, that have been documented, that actually dictate how it is that you should experience this, or things that could. There's no right way or wrong way for passing. There really isn't.
Right.
Yeah.
There's just, now look at what the individual is going through. I've read about this. I've witnessed this.
Mm-hmm.
Chances are this will last this amount of time and then go into the next phase.
Well, it's interesting too, because there's spiritual things that describe the end process, and nowadays that's very much lining up with the medical definition of the end process of the things that you've read of. Okay, how this is going to happen, and it's going to be this period or an indication that this is coming. And there's now they now match up quite a lot, which is very interesting to me.
And one of the conversations that we had off this recently, if energy is neither, the science says, energy is neither created nor destroyed.
Mm-hmm.
It's transferred, correct? So if your body is full of energy, if you want to call it that, what happens when you pass? Where does that go?
Right.
And so I don't think any one of us has the right answer, but certainly we've experienced that energy.
A lot of different possibilities.
That's the one thing we can all agree on. Science, the medical community, the spiritual community, is that energy, like you said, there's no beginning and no end, right? It's just continuous. So we can all agree on that. Now, what happens with it is where we start to kind of fall apart a little bit in our definitions.
I forget what I was watching, and I'm definitely quoting somebody, and I apologize to whoever it is, but there was somebody on a TV show, or even maybe a Facebook thing that I went across, that basically says, by definition, to exist means you're going to exist. By definition, existing means there's no non-existing. So it's like an infinite loop just in that statement, but it's the same thing. Energy cannot be created or destroyed. Well, if you exist, therefore you're existing. There's no non-existing by definition of existing. It's very deep.
Very deep. So before we go, and I know this is we're getting short on time, but you were also an emergency room nurse as well. Did you ever have any instance where someone did the near-death experience, where they either passed and came back and might have had some sort of story similar to when the actual passing had, someone that's been there and came back?
Isn't that strange, but so true? And there are multiple over the course of the time that I was in the emergency department. It was so many that experience the same thing. And so they would come in, they would either be on life support brought in by, fire rescue with someone who may have been having heart attack.
And
things of
here
that
you're in a
nature.
different role. Here you're there to save
the
their life. Okay.
Save the life. So jump on and all hands on deck to try and save this person. And when they are saved, isn't it funny how many of them have the same experience of envisioning there was something that was calling me, and I saw my body.
And I heard everything that happened. And I saw things. I mean, these have been medically recounted, documented, that people have seen themselves, have seen everything that was happening, have seen the light, have seen a tunnel, have seen, all these things. When they wake up, do they tell you this? Like, are they in awe of everything they just experienced or confused by it?
They're confused by it. Many. There's some that will tell you and
Yeah.
and they'll say it in a matter-of-fact way, but for the most part, they're confused by it. I had this experience, and I've heard about this experience, but I had never really, obviously felt it. I had never had a near-death experience, and so it's pretty amazing to see how people recant the same thing over and over with some variations, but for the most part, they're saying the same thing. It doesn't matter what your background is. It doesn't matter where you come from. It doesn't matter what your upbringing may have been. It doesn't matter whether you are highly
Political
religious
beliefs or whatever.
That plays no bearing in any of this.
Zero.
So sometimes doesn't it make you wonder, why are we being so harsh on ourselves when in the end it's all the same?
Wow, that's a great thought to end this show. Thank you so much, Jolie. We appreciate you. And this was a wonderful conversation that people, I'm sure, are very curious about, because we all have our life cycle that we worry about and what happens after.
Your dash.
So our dash.
Our dash.
Make sure that your dash counts.
We're stealing that from you, Yoli.
Yes, I love that. Thank you so much. And we appreciate it. And we look forward to having you on with other conversations about what the medical community feels about certain topics and how that comes together with spirituality.
Would love it. Thank you.
Thank you guys. Have a great day.
See you next time.